try to get started our July 2020 General Assembly. If we have our introductions on the Zoom group chat, then are there brief announcements? Executive committee reports.
All right, chair report. So this past month we had our Pittsburgh Green Enters event. We had a bunch of Greens going to various actions, Black Lives Matter protests and Stop Making Bomb protests. We're starting to use our phone tree, trying to get it up and running. It's not perfect yet, but we're still working on it. We got social media started. Our 4 committees are meeting, and we're going to hear more from those committees soon. We have 3 Pennsylvania House campaigns that we're currently trying to get on the ballot. It's myself, Garrett Wasserman, and Michael Bagdas Canning. And also we have our statewide candidates that we're trying to get on the ballot at the same time that we're working along with the rest of the state about. And there's also a lawsuit going on. So this month might be the month of petitioning, or we won't have to do any petitioning, or something in between. We'll have to see. That's all I got for my chair report.
Treasury report, Kelly.
There we go. I unmuted myself. We've had pretty consistent monthly payments coming in at the beginning of the month, because that's when our meetings are, and that is when I remind people that they should sign up if they haven't already, which is good. I'm pretty sure we have roughly the same amount. I didn't actually get around to checking how much of it was for Jay's campaign and how much was for our general fund before the meeting. But we've got, hang on a second, I'm sorry. Oh, what? Yes, I am. Goodbye. Really great timing. So we've gotten quite a good bit of money in the past month, but a lot of it was for Jay's campaign. So just business as usual. We've sold a couple t-shirts. That's good. Over.
Can I ask, was the money from a variety of contributors to Jay's campaign? Yes,
we had one large contributor and then lots of others. So it was good.
Good for you, Jay. Okay, Green Wave Committee, Garrett. Is Garrett with us?
I guess I will.
I think he's not.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, so we're starting, Garrett's campaign started meeting, my campaign started meeting, and I'm trying to get Michael Bagdas Canning's campaign to start meeting. I've been like calling people in Venango and stuff like that, but hopefully that'll start meeting soon. And yeah, surprise, Mike. Otherwise, ballot access lawsuit results should come out tomorrow. You know, fingers crossed that we get some sort of relief. You know, it would be really shameful if we didn't get any sort of relief at all. What else? Trying to think about 2021. Haven't made real concrete steps there. But you know, all the campaigns are really thinking about ballot access right now, and also trying to like fill campaign staff positions. Yeah, so that's where we're at with Green Wave. Anything else? Oh, I guess this is Green Wave. Neighborhood groups. So we're trying to get our neighborhood groups going again. We had them going before quarantine started, and we're trying to get together maybe like a Zoom meeting or something like that. So look out for that. If you live near a bunch of groups, you'll probably be contacted about the neighborhood group. Over.
Jay, can you just say which court is hearing the ballot access with Libertarians, Greens, and Constitutional?
It's a federal court. I don't remember exactly which.
And they're going to announce their decision tomorrow? Okay. All right, Media Committee, Ron. Ron was with us.
Ron, you should do it. You should do it, Ron.
I
didn't
saw a
realize.
notification that he left. He might have like gotten disconnected or something because
Okay.
he's not here anymore.
All right, thank you. Policy Committee, Billy.
Yes. So the policy committee is working on the criminal justice portion of our municipal level Green New Deal. We decided that centering local folks already working on these issues is something imperative for any of our policy proposals. To meet that objective, over the past month, we've compiled a list of almost 40 local organizations, collectives, and individuals who do criminal justice related work. We initially want to focus on the organizations whose main function is criminal justice. We're looking now for anyone who might be willing to commit to researching one of these like 10-ish local organizations. The goal would be to write down any public policy recommendations or demands they may have on their website, in their reports, or on their social media. So let me know if you're interested in supporting that effort. Also, we're compiling additional lists of local organizations and activist collectives to research other remaining policy issues like housing, renewable energy, transit, environment, health, and food access. If you want to be lead on compiling a list for one of those topics or another Green New Deal related subject, let me know. That would be awesome. Or if you don't want to commit to that, but you want to support our efforts, you could send me a list of all the local organizations you do know off the top of your head, and I can plug them into a list. You can get in touch by posting in the Slack policy committee channel, private message me in Slack, or email me. I'll drop my email address in the chat. And in the interest of keeping the meeting on time, if you have any questions or if you have a good local organization you do want to recommend now, you can put them in the chat and I'll respond or note it. Over.
Okay. Anti-fracking working group, Michael.
Am I the anti-fracking working group?
That's what it says. If you don't have something in your report, that's fine.
There's been several big wins in the last 2 weeks. I don't know if this is related to what you guys want to talk about, but the Constitution Pipeline, the Hollerans got their land back. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline. I heard you guys talking about KXL. The Attorney General released several charges against 2 fracking companies just recently, not in the last week or so, but and then also released a grand jury report which excoriated DEP. Didn't hold the Department of Health nor Governor Wolf is to the fire as much, but should have. Yeah, pretty much. That's what I got.
Okay. Criminal Justice Working Group, it says for Carmen. Is that tied up with what Billy was saying, Jay?
Carmen is not here, so I was going to do it. Basically, you know, we're in that Policing for Allegheny County coalition, and we met to pack these like what are they called? Like care packages for people who just got out of the Allegheny County jail. And we haven't been meeting too much because of the kind of like increased activity with marches and protests. And then, yeah, that's the other part, is that there's been a lot of these Black Lives Matters protests, which, you know, a bunch of us Greens have been attending, kind of like too many for us to really attend all of them. But that work continues. Yeah, that's it.
Our daughter has been going to several of the protests, and she said Bill Perduto the mayor has been very contradictory. Do you think that we should make a statement in regards to what he's saying versus what's actually happening in the streets? Anybody want to speak on that?
I think that his response to the Black activist community organizations requesting change with policing and protester protection, that he just totally evaded so many clear points of interest that were made. And so it would be beneficial to respond to that specific letter.
Thank you. Anybody else?
A slightly different subject.
A little bit slow on this. You hear me? It's Nora. What
Yeah, you-
about us
Beth?
sending a letter? It's Nora. What about us sending a letter with all the Greens signing it to Peduto, his contradictory stands, the protesters?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think at the very least, we need to ask him to make an unambiguous statement. And try and at least get him on the record as to what his position is, because the bait and switch is real in politics here, and I think he needs to be asked to definitively get off the fence and take a position. It's just my opinion, and were it up to me, what I would ask in a letter.
I think if anyone's following what he's been saying, I think it's pretty clear he's already made his position. And it's not progressive, it's status quo. And I think it's an opportunity. If we we're going to say anything, it would be to like show what a Green candidate might say in this position. Because I think he's made it. I don't think we need to ask him to say anything more. He said it.
I would also add, this is Connor and Brookline for everyone I haven't met yet, but I would echo what Jay put into the chat, which is we need to be mindful of capacity when we're talking about this. So the mayor, and I don't know if anybody caught the county executive's response to the protests also, they're kind of similar in essentially passing the buck and saying that, you know, their hands are tied. It's out of their range to make any meaningful change. Well, you know, we as an organization are in the position, you know, with members running for state house and you know, potentially eyeing other seats, you know, we could be in a position to advocate for meaningful change. And I think we need to be mindful of that, to Jay's point, and make really, really refined, really targeted suggestions for policy proposals at each level that are within each seat's grasp. And that should be careful consideration for anything. And Beth just put, what about Fitzgerald? Yeah, he did respond in some capacity. It was honestly very shameful. I encourage anybody to Google it. I'll, you know, once I shut up, I'll search myself and try to find it and put it in the chat. But it's about what you would expect.
Just real quick, we signed on to a letter kind of like similar to this. So we didn't write it, but we signed on to it. It didn't come out yet. It's from DSA. DSA wrote it originally. We like voted to do it as the steering committee with kind of like input from general members in the Slack. Also, I think there's been talk of like, at least like my campaign, like putting out something about sort of like this. So it's kind of like unclear. I don't know where there's been like a few things that we've talked about. Yeah.
Well, Jay, would you think of, I hear you saying, I appreciate everybody's comments. I know I've said that I'm going to do some petitioning with you, Jay. Can you put together a draft of what you actually think on this point? And then when we petition, we can hand the people the letter and say, this is what the guy thinks. This is what our candidate thinks.
Yeah, we can, that's an interesting idea. I have something like drafted, but I know, I think Alexis talked about potentially like starting a discussion about what our like party stance would be too. So that could be good. And we can put out, you know, we have the blog, we can put out, there's multiple venues for us to put out statements.
Oh, you just couldn't make the floor in front of me. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Our next one is,
I do have something.
okay.
Olivia Bennett has put out a request for feedback on what we want to see in terms of a county civilian review board. They are asking people to submit their questions, I think by noon tomorrow, so that it'll be part of their meeting tomorrow evening. I haven't thought about it, but I will post that in Slack so people can respond.
Well, Jay, I'll offer to go over, if you put a draft together of a letter, I'd be glad to look at it and try to finalize it. If we can include some of these ideas, I think it'd be a great timing, great way to posture green candidates.
Well, also, I
Okay,
think
we'll go on
that as
then.
individuals, we can respond to it as well. But I'll put that in the Slack.
Thanks, Beth. Green Energy Working Group, that's myself. I have nothing new to report since last month. Single Payer Working Group, Claire. I know that Claire is with us.
Wait, is she here? No. She's taking care of her mother. She said she can't make it. But I don't think there's anything to report from Single Payer.
All right. Anti-war working group, David.
I can also speak for the single payer group, but there's not a lot to report, frankly. The Democrats in the House just passed improved Obamacare, which they've sent over to the Senate, which is it has some nice little things in it if it ever went anywhere, but it's just another example of, incremental change, avoiding what's needed to be done, The people who like Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are really getting represented by their leaders. On our side, on the Democratic side, those people, that constituency doesn't get represented at all by that party. So it's very clear how we need the Green Party, who historically supports single payer. There'll be a single payer steering committee on the 15th of July to talk about where we continue to go from here. Yeah.
David, are you able to address the anti-war working group also?
Well, the anti-war is primarily the Stop Banking the Bomb group, because that's the only sort of AWC activity. There were various AWC sort of functions or activities over the years. The only one that's consistently happening now is the Stop Banking the Bomb. And we had a meeting with the management of PNC about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, to try to share with them why we think they really need to divest from the companies that manufacture nuclear weapons. But it was an interesting meeting in the sense that they didn't do what we wanted, of course, but also they made ridiculous statements like nuclear weapons are good because they're defensive. So they had the Stop Banking the Bomb group requested another meeting with these people last week, which I didn't attend. So I really can't speak to it, but I know that Michael Drohan made a presentation. We each had 30 minutes at that meeting to make presentations, and our side presented through Michael Drohan the whole issue of the doomsday clock and how close it is to doomsday, and why that is the case, and trying to educate them on what this really is all about in terms of the extinction of the planet, basically. But, they really don't get it. So then we reactivated our street protests after a couple of months off because of COVID, 2 or 3 months off. And we had a good turnout show up at the PNC headquarters downtown and did a protest in front of the headquarters for Stop Banking the Bomb. So we're going to be having more and more of those pickets, especially at their branch offices around the region coming up. Can't think of anything else. Did I miss something, Jay? You were there.
Nope, you got it all.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Green Party Allegheny County Black Caucus, Claire is out still. Anybody else able to speak on that group?
Yeah, we've had 2 meetings, and we are having an event this Friday for Movement for Black Lives, which Dominic provided really nice graphics for. We're going to discuss the Movement for Black Lives 5-year plan. And it's like it's being hosted by the Green Party of Allegheny County Black Caucus, but it's open to anyone who is Black in Southwestern Pennsylvania. Just to talk about like where all of our organizations can work together moving forwards on the like 5-year strategy of Movement for Black Lives. That's all I have to update. Yeah, we've just had a few meetings so far.
All right, last one for committee reports is state and national committees. Kelly, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, we had our state party meeting and we voted on who would be our delegates to the national convention for Pennsylvania to vote in the presidential nominating convention this weekend. So that was the big order of business at the state meeting. National committees, I'm not really going to get into. There hasn't been a lot of important stuff going on. I don't know. Jay, do you have any highlights you want to share?
No, let's never talk about the Green Party U.S. National.
Cool.
Wow.
Good with me. All right, over.
Good. All right. We're at old party business. And I do not have an agenda in front of me. Can someone pick up what are old party business items listed for today, please?
All we have is this June Green Enter event, and just kind of like wrap up of that. Like we did it, we executed the thing. It was, it was not ideal, but it was pretty decent. I felt, yeah, I don't know. It's done.
Hey, can you give us a little background what you're talking about?
Yeah, so we were talking about having an event. The original plan was to have an in-person event for after the Democratic primary to kind of celebrate people's return to the Green Party and just sort of like the Green Party in general. But we moved it to an online event, and we had some speakers. Michael spoke, Claire spoke. We had some music from Alexis, and we tried to have music from Mike Stout, but it didn't go off 100%. And then just had like some people who are new to the Green Party talk about why they switched to the Green Party. Like Connor spoke, I think. Dominic, did you speak also? I don't 100% remember. It was like at the beginning of the month, so it feels like forever ago. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Anything else old business?
David mentioned in the chat if you could hear a little bit more about the lawsuit, the Ballot Access lawsuit.
David, you're still muted, I think.
Oh, is David asking me to talk?
Jay, who are you speaking to?
Yeah, David mentioned Garrett for the lawsuit, if you have any information.
Sorry, I kept trying to unmute the mic and it wouldn't work, but now I think it did. Yeah, Garrett offered to talk about it whenever it's feasible.
Garrett, you're on.
Yeah, that kind of works with the next item on the new party business anyway, so I'll just kind of jump to that. I think everyone's aware of at least the existence of our ballot access lawsuit. To keep it very short, we have to, like any party, collect a certain number of signatures from voters to have our candidates appear on the ballot. Of course, we're generally required to have many more signatures than Republicans and Democrats. We also have to collect our signatures later in the season. So, we weren't legally allowed to collect signatures until like the end of February or something like that this year. Whereas Democrats and Republicans started earlier. So it ended up working out that basically right at the time when we were supposed to start petitioning was when COVID came and events started canceling, and then the governor shut down the state and all that stuff. So we haven't really been able to do the petitioning that we normally would this year to get signatures for candidates. So we filed a ballot access lawsuit against it in federal court. Again, to kind of keep it short, we basically just argued that for public safety reasons, as well as, you know, the governor's order down to counties have ordered people to stay home for a long time, and even now in the green phase, stay away from large groups and you know, keep distance, and none of that helps with collecting petitions when, you know, normally we have to go and talk to big groups of people at events and things like that to get signatures. So we argued that made it really difficult to get the signatures, and that that requirement should be waived this year. Tom Wolf, the Wolf administration and the Democratic Party objected to that, saying that the state was never at any time shut down. Yeah, they argued this, even though we were in the red phase and everything. They argued that the state was never shut down and we should have just been out petitioning anyway. And nobody stopped us and told us that we couldn't petition, so we should have just been doing it. So we just filed in court some extra documentation that some people who were out petitioning in a state park actually were stopped by the state police and told that they weren't allowed to petition because that actually was against, you know, all of the COVID orders. So, so we filed some extra documentation in court saying, like, yeah, it's actually happening. There was an order and people really are being told to stop petitioning. So, you know, hopefully that's all working on our side. So the court is expected to rule on an emergency injunction, or whatever the term is, very soon, possibly as soon as tomorrow, I believe is the last hearing. So I will give everyone an update as soon as we know, but hopefully we'll win that lawsuit and get the requirements significantly knocked down, if not eliminated. Other states have seen a bunch of different options. Some of them have had the signatures reduced. Like I think Illinois, they still have to get signatures, but it's like 10% of the normal. So it's like, it would be a lot more doable. Other states, I forget which one, but a couple of them, instead of the signature requirement, the court just said, well, since you got to invest some time and money anyway, how about we just raise the filing fees? And that kind of counts as like you did extra work, right? You did some fundraising that proves that you have some support. So we'll just call that even. So, you know, hopefully they'll do something like that for us. But I'll let you know as soon as we know. So the downside that we have to prepare for is that hopefully we will win this week and be notified, and we can just put our candidates on the ballot, be done with it, and start preparing for November campaigns. In case that doesn't happen, we have to look at petitioning, and it's still difficult in person, of course. So we're trying this effort of mailing petitions to people and having everybody in their family sign it and mail it back, which is, of course, can be slow and expensive. Wow. So anyone who's willing to help out with that effort, you know, please let us know. Hopefully some combination of mailing petitions to people and going to smaller events like farmers markets and things like that, we might be able to get at least some green candidates on the ballot, if not like the whole statewide candidates that we were trying to do. But, you know, our filing deadline is August 3rd, so we'll have to do the best that we can if we don't win the court case, but hopefully we'll just win. And there's good reasons to think that we will because of all the stuff that we filed, and most court cases, most other Green parties in other states have filed, and a bunch of them have already won court cases where, like I said, they've reduced that requirement. So there's reasons to be hopeful, but you know, we'll see how it turns out. So I think that's basically what that new party business thing is about on Get Greens on the Ballot. Just in case the court case doesn't go well, you know, Jay and I and Michael Bagdis Canning have been talking about trying to get signatures the best way we can. Like I said, maybe small events like farmers markets and all, where we can keep distance and keep safe, and mailing petitions to people as needed. So that's the update for that. Maybe Jay has some more information on that.
I would, sorry, Jay, if I could just put it in, it's Nora. I would like to buy a really big green shirt, because when my wrist gets better, I'd like to be highly visible at those markets. And there is one in Bloomfield on Saturday, in case anybody wants to start then.
We gathered signatures last weekend, and we gathered like 150 about. And it was like over 4 hours, 5 volunteers. And it's like impossible to maintain social distancing. It's like inherently an endangering activity for those gathering
Yeah.
conditions, you know? So,
Okay. So
you know,
okay.
like you're not in a crowd of people, but you are like exchanging things one-on-one with another person. You know, we can wear
Yeah.
masks, but like, I don't know, it's just very tricky. So, you know, if anyone's like vulnerable or with other vulnerable people, I wouldn't recommend it.
Right. Okay.
Can I just ask Jay, while you had the mic, can you say some of the communities that you want to run? Where is your district in the city?
So
For new-
Pennsylvania House
new
District 23 is all of Squirrel Hill, half of Shady Side, half of Point Breeze, half of Oakland, all of Regent Square, and half of Greenfield.
And Garrett has left temporarily. Garrett lives in the Coriopolis area. He was looking to run for a district that has parts of Moon Township and Coriopolis. So if you're in those areas, those are two green candidates that could use your help here locally. All right, anything else in old business?
The next thing, old business, sorry.
Are we done with old business? Okay, let's go to the new business. Jake, can you read off the first one, the new business, please?
Yeah, it's we just talked about gathering signatures for our campaigns, so I think we're done with that. So the next thing is our Drop 12 presentation from County Councilperson Liv Bennett.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to come to your meeting to share the GOT 12 demands that were presented to Allegheny County's County Executive Rich Fitzgerald and also to Mayor Peduto by the Black Activist Organizer Collective. So I was asked to basically talk through what these mean. So that's what I'm here. So that's what I'll do. So the first one is demilitarize the police. And so I don't know, I know a number of you like Jay, who come out and support activist movements, have been to protests, may have been at a protest where tear gas was deployed, rubber bullets, things of that nature. So demilitarizing the police means that they would not have money or won't be spending money to buy excess military weapons to use against civilians, which, you know, we don't believe in using weapons of war against our own civilian people. So we are advocating that our police do not have these things so that they cannot use these weapons against civilians. That was actually number two. Let me go back to number one. Number one actually is defund the police and fund Black communities. So defunding the police is basically taking funds from the budget, whether that's county budget, a city budget, a municipal budget, any budget who has police who have police in their budget, taking funds from that and putting them into other resources such as social work, mental health resources, rehabilitation resources, housing, some of these things that need to be built up to keep people from having encounters with police and encounters with incarceration and other things. So taking money out of the police budget and putting it into the communities is the number one S. And then number two would be demilitarizing the police. So if we're defunding the police, that gives them less funding to militarize. So maybe they'll automatically do that because they don't have such excess funds of buying the overstock from the military as far as tanks and other weaponry to use against civilians. The third one is in the criminalization of Black people. We know that the Allegheny County Jail is disproportionately Black. When I don't know the percentage at this moment because there's been a lot of shifting in the jail recently with COVID and us releasing folks because of COVID. So I don't have the latest demographic, but even in that releasing, I do know that even though Black folks make up a greater population of the county jail, they were not released at the greater or the greater percentage in even in the COVID effort. So there is an inherent criminalization of Black people by the police, and that needs to stop. And so that was our third demand. Number 4 is remove all police from schools. We know that there is a school to prison pipeline, and that starts with having police in our schools. If police are not in our schools, then they cannot be there to press charges against our children that are put in, and then in turn putting them into the system. So if we remove the police, we have a APA, which is part of the collective, had a campaign, counselors not cops. So it's pushing towards that infrastructure of replacing police with actual counselors that can address our children in our schools and really get at the core of a lot of the behavioral issues, usually are centered in mental health and other things that can be more easily addressed by a social worker or counselor than somebody carrying a gun and a badge. Number 5 is make all collective bargaining with the police public. We know that these unions protect officers. It is why it is so hard to get officers reprimanded and fired from police forces, because they are so protected by the language in these contracts, yet these contracts are not transparent to the public. And these officers, I mean, they are public servants at the end of the day. So we should know the agreements that they are held to, or what their protections are in the language of their contracts, and they should be public. On the same note, terminate the Pittsburgh FOP president, Robert Schwartzwelder. It has been documented in more than one case where he has actually averted having officers kind of subpoenaed and prosecuted, charged. Like they're literally protecting killer cops, and he did things to actively try to keep evidence away from being exposed on officers. Like he's literally subverting justice. So when it comes to police officers, there was a petition that One Hood did, I want to say maybe a year ago, around this, that tells the whole deeper story. And I would encourage folks to go and find that, because it is still out there and it's still actively accepting signatures. So please read it and go and sign it if you agree. So number 7 is disband all private police departments. We know that there are private police departments in some of these little communities that have these private housings or buildings or things like that, and they don't really have any protocols. East Pittsburgh, for example, East Pittsburgh, which was actual to police department, had no protocols. So imagine the protocols that are or are not there for these private police departments. So it's just another way of having oversight with very little accountability. And again, it's people that were trusting with guns. And we don't want people encountering folks that don't have a standard of accountability or procedure. And so number 8 is end no knock warrants. We know Breonna Taylor, which happened maybe 2 months ago, maybe at this point, was a victim of police murder when they went into her home in search of an actor that wasn't even there. And it ended up that they weren't even in the right apartment, but they had no defense because they used a no-knock warrant. No-knock warrants mean that the officer can break down your door, come in. They usually execute these in the middle of the night when people are asleep. And so they did that to Breonna Taylor. Her boyfriend responded thinking that they were you know, getting robbed or having a home invasion, shot, and Breonna Taylor ends up dead. So it didn't give an opportunity for anybody to look at that warrant. It didn't give that opportunity for anybody in that home to respond to that warrant and even say, hey, that's not even us. You don't even have the wrong place. You don't even have the right place. No-knock warrants have become an issue. They've been an issue. Breonna Taylor just highlighted that. Many times these no-knock warrants are given and they yield very, very small results. They're given on the presumption that they're going to yield these big drug busts, and more likely than not, they do not. So we don't need to be entering folks' homes with no-knock warrants and leaving them defenseless to even respond to this in the case that it's not even the right home, which happens more than is publicized. So number 9, cease partnership with ICE. We should not be partnering with ICE. We should be protecting all citizens, residents of Allegheny County, and those are also our immigrant. It's also our immigrant community. We do not want our police to be working with ICE actively to disrupt that community. And we have Black immigrants too. So when people often say immigrants, people don't often think of Black folks, but we have Black immigrants as well. So that is part of our ask, and there is some intersectionality in our ask, because I'm sure there's other communities that have the same ask. So number 10, in cash bail. This has been a conversation for longer than not. We know that people are, are prone to be treated better if they're rich and guilty than they are if they're poor and innocent. So we should not be presuming people's innocence and guilt on the ability to pay and get out of jail, or have the money to get out of jail. We should not be imposing cash bail on folks and keeping them in jail for a very long time in some cases, just on the fact that they did not have enough cash to bail themselves out of jail. That is the opposite of the presumption of innocence before proven guilty. And we know time and time again, it has negative impacts. That person may have been holding a job that now is lost because they were being held in jail and couldn't afford to get out. They may have lost housing. They may have lost their children. I mean, the ripples effects of doing this is harmful. So we need to stop, and that's another thing we are fighting for. Release all vulnerable individuals from jail. Again, in COVID, this became a really big issue. Releasing folks from the jail that are a vulnerable population, whether that's being older, having pre-existing health conditions, even the fact we've been also fighting to make sure those that actually are in the jail are being treated and having the ability to physically distance because of COVID-19. So we want to always make sure that all folks in our society are being protected. That's including the people in our jail. And by getting the vulnerable people out of the jail leaves room for the others that need to be there to actually have room and space to do the distancing that's needed to mitigate the transmission of the virus, which I'm sure you all have been paying attention. Numbers have been going up exponentially. So we imagine that is also going to be true in the jail as well. And then finally, create an independent, fully funded civilian police review board. That is actually something that I am working on as chair of public safety in county council. I am actually having a talk session, a listening session tomorrow being hosted by Take Action Mon Valley. We will be posting it. We'll be going live from Take Action Mon Valley's page. But yes, we are actually asking for a fully funded independent police review board because we know that in Allegheny County, there are over 100 and plus police departments, and only one, well, two have independent police review boards. That is Pittsburgh and that is Duquesne. And Duquesne's is very, very new. So while they have it, I don't know how effective it is. So I would say Pittsburgh is the only one in the region that's really working, because they've had it for the last like 20 years. So we need something like that for the county, because Pittsburgh is one police force. And like I said, we have over 100. So who is monitoring these other 100 plus police forces in Allegheny County? And it's these police forces that we have more encounters and more issues with, because they don't have protocols, they don't have oversight, they don't have the resources. Just all the way around, it is not good. So if we can get a police, independent, fully funded police review board, we can start creating the oversight and the standards that we want all of our police departments to operate from in Allegheny County. Yes. Any questions?
I have one comment. Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if people know this, it's a side kind of thing, but a lot of the issue, in terms of that issue of militarization of police departments around the country, a lot of the training is done in Israel. And in fact, the knee and the neck mechanism is taught by the Israeli trainers to American policemen, and 124 Minneapolis police took that training in Israel. So it would be interesting to see if that played a role in Floyd's murder, you know.
Just yesterday, the Allegheny County courts announced that several members of the actual court staff and attorneys have tested positive for COVID. And that's going to have far-reaching implications within the courthouse now, not just the jail, but now the court personnel.
Yeah, Liv,
Yes.
was there any discussion in coming up with those 12 points to asking that officers be required to live in the neighborhoods they police?
No, but I was on a call yesterday. I'm on a lot of calls lately. I was on a call yesterday, and actually Chief Schubert was on that call, and that did come up. So I think that is something that is starting to, be reignited. Of course, again, that kind of goes back to the police contracts and these agreements, because that is something that was fought for in the contract. So it is now in the language of the contract that those police officers can live 24 air miles from downtown city county building. So we need to be on task to know when that contract comes up, what does that language say specifically, and how do we get that language out of there and make these police officers come back in and have to live in the neighborhoods that they serve. There was also discussion about increasing volunteerism. There used to be a time where apparently city employees, including police officers, could go into the community and volunteer, and in exchange, they would basically be paid for it because they would get a free day off in exchange for doing that community service. So trying to go back to those things so that we can actually get officers to be invested in the community in which they're supposed to protect and serve, instead of this overseer model where you come in and herd and oversee, and then you go back out into your cushy suburb home with never developing relationship with anybody you're herding.
Yeah. And then one other question, if I could. Historically, the police in London have never carried firearms. Has there been any discussion opening a dialogue on whether or not routine patrols should carry firearms as a part of their daily activity?
I think that is absolutely a viable addition to the discussion. I welcome it. I would add it to my, list of things that I would mention, with your permission of plagiarism. But so, I think this is the time to add all of that to the discussion, right? Like, yes, these are our 12 demands, but that doesn't mean that's the end and be all. If you have other creative ideas, let's talk about them. Like, this is the time to reimagine public safety as we know it. This is the time to reimagine society as we know it. I mean, we could talk about public safety, we could talk about capitalistic models, like all of this could be reimagined because none of it seems to be working. So why not? Why not?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Nora. I was gonna suggest, what about there being negotiators, like a huge negotiating part of the police station. So there's like, let's say 20. And anytime you think that a negotiator would be useful, you send them out with the cops. They wouldn't be cops. They would be, like, very simply put, as a teacher, as soon as I learned the labor negotiation, in 10 years of teaching, I only had 2 children that refused, that would not be a part of it. So I think if we had professional negotiators out there, that we would solve a whole bunch of problems with the cops.
You mean like some areas have mediators?
Right, mediators.
Who when there's a conflict, help the people in conflict work through it? For example, someone gets caught shoplifting. You send a mediator, and they work out between the store owner and the person who is shoplifting what the right kind of response is.
Right.
They might come to an agreement, okay, you're gonna pay me so much overtime or whatever it is, but it doesn't always have to be.
The kid doesn't have to have the record if it's some little teenager.
I just want to cut in here.
You still learn consequences, because there still would be some kind of consequences.
There would be consequences, right?
Okay, can we move on, please? Anybody else comments for Liv?
Yeah, I have a couple. When you talk about decriminalization, are you just going to focus on whether people end up in the jail and in the prisons, or are you going to focus also on the way the police act in the community? For example, a friend of mine was walking across a parking lot near where he works. He was wearing a hoodie. Okay. Not illegal, but people react to that. A cop came up because he was walking through a parking lot, but like I said, it was right close to where he worked. It was a natural path for him to take, and challenged him for being in the parking lot, and gave him words, and ended up knocking his phone out of his hands onto the ground.
Wow.
And he kept his cool. This is a guy who knows how to handle things. This was over in Homewood. And, he didn't get arrested or anything, but I think that there's an intensity and inappropriate aggressiveness in community policing that can be a problem even when people don't end up in jail. And I hope that will be considered as part of decriminalizing the police and then decriminalizing the Black community. It's just getting it so the police no longer react to Black people like they are about
criminal.
Well, that is what I say. That's usually my response when I hear that police need more training, because we see that white actors do very much more violent crimes than those who had their life taken from them, but yet been taken into custody, taken to Burger King, and without harm. So it's not a matter of training protocol. It's not a matter of you can't peacefully arrest somebody. It is literally anti-racist training that they need, and you can't give somebody anti-racist training after they have a gun and a badge. That training should have happened prior to giving somebody a gun and a badge. So absolutely, that is part of decriminalizing being Black, because It is the anti-racist, it is the racist behavior that is in the foundation of the police force that we are going after. So yes, thank you.
Another piece of that, I happen to know one of the people who teaches the implicit bias courses. And there have been people in those classes, which are given to people after they've been hired, but before they start policing, who she felt didn't pass the course, in particular, some of the sheriffs. But even some of the people who it wasn't quite that clear cut, her very strong feeling was that proper evaluation of the people before they were hired had not been done, that their attitudes were, okay, now I get the chance to knock some heads together. Is that part of what these demands are going to address?
The hope is yes. Again, we are always asking for all the voices. We are not the voices of the whole community. Our goal is to start the conversation and to bring all the voices in so that we can get all of the input on all the ways that these need to happen, that policing needs to change. We have people who believe in police abolition. We have people that believe in defunding. We have people that believe, we have a whole spectrum. So it's not one or the other. It's not, is this included, is that included? It's not piecemealing, it's the whole thing. And if you bring it to the table, then yes, it's included.
Unfortunately, I won't be there tomorrow night because I have a conflict, but as one of your constituents, I strongly encourage you to include it.
Anybody else? Comments for Liv?
I had one. So one of the things that, if I understand correctly, is that I think that police are they have a hard time finding people these days. And so they just sort of whoever, I don't know if that's true or not, but I've read in a couple articles that that's the case. They have a hard time finding people. So is there anything that we can think about doing to potentially change the demographics of people who are going into police work? I don't know if that's, I don't know if that would maybe also address certain things.
Well, that absolutely came up on the call that I was on yesterday about diversifying the police force and how difficult it's been, because if you don't have a trust from the Black community and other communities of color, then of course those folks aren't going to want to come in and participate in your systems. They find them very triggering, actually. So why would they participate in them? So there have been conversations around how you can actively recruit. I think that I live in a community where we have a mini station that I actually was involved in helping to get off the ground up here. And if I'm honest, it's been a disappointment, because I think that was the whole purpose of me advocating for it, was to build that foundation where the police can start building that relationship with the community. And I felt the marker of that was seeing a little kid like, oh, you've gotten so close to these officers because they've engaged, they've been out in the community, they're now walking the beat, all the things that they sold us on that never really happened. I'm looking forward to continuing having these conversations with Pittsburgh police, especially since I'm right here ground zero, and challenging that, because you're absolutely right. If we are not diversifying our police force, because even, if you're an abolitionist, I think abolitionists, the reason why they've even come on to the defunding, train, is because they understand that is a method of getting to abolition. So knowing that we're not going to go to abolition, like from the police force we have today to abolition tomorrow, we still have to work within the structures that are here, and in working in those structures, we do need to diversify the police force so that structure starts to look more like the communities that they are serving, instead of these largely white male suburban privileged people that are coming in and again overseeing communities instead of collaborating and working within the communities. I hope that answered your question. Sorry.
Can I get a question?
Yes, yes,
My
sir.
question is, how can the Green Party of Allegheny County support your efforts in like keeping in mind that we're trying to run local municipal candidates and get them elected, and then they can kind of weigh in on some of these things?
Yeah, being a candidate, I kind of get or having been a candidate, obviously, I would kind of get that tightrope. So I honestly, I mean, you don't have to pick up the whole platform. Like, that's a lot. Like, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. So, I don't know, like if you feel you gauging your community and kind of gauging where your community's comfort level is, I guess, would like if you know your community, a lot of folks in your community may have been out there during the protest and were tear gas, so demilitarization of police might make sense for that part of the community, where another part of the community might say, oh, well, defunding makes sense to me because I know that I had people who had mental health issues and the police responded and it just made everything worse. So I think it depends upon the community that you're trying to target and trying to gauge and see where their comfort level would be, and putting that specific thing out there. Again, you don't have to pick up all 12. We understand it's a lot. That's why it's coming from the activist collective, because we're supposed to be radical as hell. So, we're literally taking that space to do that. I understand as a candidate, we cannot always do that. That's why I have like 5-7 different tables going on. So challenging balancing act, but so far it's working. But yeah, I just say, kind of figure out where your folks' comfort level is. Pick up maybe 1 or 2.
How about 5 or 6?
I mean, if that's where you think they're comfortable, I mean, but I wouldn't, advocate for, I do advocate for making folks uncomfortable, but not at the point where you're losing, your seat, because the things that you can do once you're in the seat are are also important. Writing policy, voting against racist policy, like the stuff that we're doing at the county. I mean, we're blowing people's minds because they've never governed. Like, they're like, oh my God, you're introducing things every week. Like, just because y'all haven't, like, this is your job too, do it. So, yeah, so I understand the balance of wanting to be authentic in what you believe in, but also not scaring away your voters. It's a tightrope, but unfortunately, I was able to like walk unapologetically because I just was always in the streets and I never hit that. I mean, you could have Googled me and found that out. So like, what was the point? But some of these other things you might not be able to Google. I might not be able to Google Jay and be like, oh, he's about, getting rid of that FOP president. So, I mean, some things you might be taking a little bit more risk if you put it out there, and just be mindful of that. But I say go to the limit that you feel like you can without tipping over your whole campaign. I don't know if that was a great answer for you, but that's the politically correct answer for you.
Well, maybe we can also make a statement as the Green Party of Allegheny County that doesn't necessarily have to be every candidate's full statement.
That's true too. Yes, it doesn't have to be the specific candidate's platform. It just could be a party position. Absolutely.
And then folks could say, yes, I agree with most of this, but whatever is the sticking point, they can skip. And realistically, I mean, I want them to ban chokeholds tomorrow because you could do that. The defunding the police would take a while.
We have legislation that will be introduced next week. I want to say on no chokeholds. The city also is doing legislation on no chokeholds. So that's the power of these demands, is that literally the city was like, oh shit, we don't have to do any work. Y'all just gave it to us. We'll just put policy behind what y'all just said. Yep, that part. So they're listening, and that's the important part. So we're actually getting policy out of it, and that's where the difference is going to be made.
Well,
Beth, could I ask you if you would like to write up what you would think would be a good position paper for the Green Party of Allegheny County, and submit it to the Slack. And can we go with one more comment for Liv?
Can I ask one more thing in terms
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
It's Billy.
Yeah, Billy.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask which ones of those policies do you think would be easiest to do from like a municipal level, you know, as like stepping stones? Which ones would you say would be the ones that would be feasible for like one county person who might not have other, you know, people who are working with them, you know, or they might have to convince people. Which ones of those do you think we should focus on if we do get in?
So the major thing that I've been really asking like municipal council people, mayors of municipalities to really start being mindful of and having conversations around is the county police review board, because we're working on it. And it's as much as people like to position that we're supposed to like get the police's approval, it's not the police that opt themselves into the police review board, it's the councils and the mayors. So we really would like to have the councils and the mayors to start the conversations with each other. Like, you know, county's working on this, it's going to be a thing. We should really consider participating because we really want to make sure that we're transparent in our police operations. So that would be very good like groundwork. So when council gets the county police board review board, that folks are like ignited to join.
Tom, I think I guess I should do this. I motion for the Green Party of Allegheny County to adopt the Drop 12 demands. And I created like a ballot sort of thing for us to be able to vote. Cause like, it's really hard for us, only Green Party members can vote. And I know everyone's registration is like all over the place, especially so soon after the primary. But we can check your registration, but we can't do it like live right now. I think we have like a good idea of how people are registered, but I created a Google form that's sort of like, do I want to adopt this? Yes or no? Am I agreeing? Yes or no? That sort of thing.
Do you want to submit that to everybody? Put it on the chat? Do you have it available for people to look at?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to second that motion?
I second it.
David,
second it.
Okay,
Absolutely.
seconded. Comments, discussion on that?
It's Nora. I just want to say that I accept and vote for all those 12. I just can't do your chat thing.
Anybody else?
That's all right, Nora. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I definitely would vote to adopt all 12.
I have a quick question, Jay. Do we do consensus voting or like majority voting or whatever? Because if we do consensus voting, then we can just ask for people to voice their concerns and we don't need to do the form.
That's true. That's true. I guess I wasn't sure how it was going to go, how people were going to feel about it. And also it is tricky to be able to like keep track of everyone's registration status,
Right. Yeah, of course.
Like someone could raise their hand or, like support it, but if they're not agreeing, it's like, they don't really get input on it.
If no one against it, it's going to be pretty clear.
Right. That's what I'm saying, is that everyone seems to be really excited about it.
We're ready to close the discussion and go to vote. Do I hear a motion to close discussion? And
I motion to close and go to vote.
And Kelly, where are you? I'm not familiar with the technicalities of bylaws.
If we vote by consensus, then all we have to do is ask for any blocking concerns. And as long as there are none, we pass it.
Let's do that.
All right. Are there any blocking concerns as to this motion?
I see
now or
none.
forever hold your peace.
Correct.
All right. Excellent. So by consensus, we have passed this motion and we will be adopting the Drop 12 platform into the local Green Party platform for Allegheny County. Woo!
Well, thank you guys for
Thank you,
your
guys.
alliance. It's dope. We love it. And I will definitely let the collective know. They'll be excited. You guys are great.
And I'm going to write a Green Party of Allegheny County suggested platform on policing and perhaps some decriminalization, because there are a few things like better screening that aren't explicitly put here, but I will include the 12 items.
All right, that
Thank
sounds
you,
good.
Beth.
And if you want to share it with us, we can definitely reciprocate and start adding that to our talking points as well. Like I said, this is a community collective discussion. No one person owns this discussion. It's all of ours. So let's have it. So on that note, thank you guys, and I'm out. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
What's next on our agenda, if anything?
Confirm the next date, time, location, which is August 4th, Tuesday, August 4th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. Again.
6 p.m. Mark
Sounds
Brown.
good.
Yes.
Would you care to give us 4 or 5 minutes of what you've been working on, telling people what your background is? Mark spoke to the executive committee about a week ago about his work with at UPMC as a grad student dealing with infectious disease. It was riveting.
I don't know if it was riveting, but yeah. So so I work. So my background is in microbiology. My bachelor degree was at the University of Pittsburgh, and now I'm doing my master's. I work in, so it's a UPMC building, but I'm a Pitt employee, so it's like a mix. So basically, you found out last Monday that we got $500,000 worth of grant money for working on COVID-19 patient samples. So we'll be looking at, I found out today actually, instead of 30 hospitals that will be sending us COVID patient samples, it'll now be more around 60 hospitals that will be from around the country to send us samples, and I'm in charge of organizing it, barcoding it, organizing it into our freezer for further research down the line. That's good news on that front. We have so much plasma we've collected already, and white blood cells. So basically what we're doing is we're collecting plasma from people that have recovered from COVID-19, and we can inject the plasma into people that are still sick or severely ill with COVID-19, and the antibodies in the blood from the donor will actually protect the person that's very sick and can save them from actually dying. And this is a technique that's been used, it was used in the 1918 Spanish flu, and it's been around for a while. It's just something that, nobody really knows about. But so we've been having some pretty good results with it. The data, we're still working on the actual hard data, so unfortunately I can't really talk about the real actual data because we don't have it compiled yet. But yeah, we've been doing that. I started back, so we locked down like the middle of March, and then by the end of March, I was setting up our lab to be a BSL 2+ lab, which we're usually a 2, and this requires 2+, which is a little bit more strict on what you can do and how you take things out of the biohood. And I'm actually, believe it or not, I found out a few hours ago, I'm going in a few minutes after we finish this meeting. I'm actually going to go to work and process another patient sample. But as far as Allegheny County and what's been happening, I don't know if everybody's been watching, we've been having a rise in infections of COVID-19. We went from, I forget, I think we were like 10, or it was pretty low. Like during the lockdown, we weren't getting many cases per day, and we shot up one day to 45 people. And then they had an idea that there was something coming, and as it works with COVID-19, by the time that you see the numbers of new cases, it's already too late. You're seeing a window like 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. So it's been circulating. There's been an outbreak for 2 or 3 weeks. So they expected that without doing anything, even with doing something when they saw that spike, that we'd still be growing. And I think it was yesterday we had 233 cases. So it's growing exponentially, and that's how viruses obviously work. So we're up to 233 cases a day. It'll fluctuate, it'll go up and down, but the general trend will be where we start getting more people, increasingly more people get sick. So right now we're sort of in the eye of the storm at my job, where I'm not going in as much usually. Ironically, today I am, but it's sort of still, you never know when or how many people you're going to get. So right now we're still experiencing the lockdown, like the low prevalence rate from lockdown, and it'll hit us probably in 3 or 4 more weeks, where we wait for people to recover from the virus, and then we check their antibodies, and then if they want to donate plasma, then we extract their plasma, and then we see what antibodies help them fight the virus. And then later on, we're going to be looking at the cellular immunity, the T cell response, which helps when the virus is inside your cells. So we're doing that right now. Like I said, sort of the eye of the storm. So I'm trying to get my vacation in maybe next weekend. So I'm going to try to do a 1.5 week vacation, and I'm going camping far away from people. So I think I'm going to try to do that, because I think, like I said, in 2 or 3 weeks we're gonna get slammed. And unfortunately, 2 of our undergraduates who had been processing have quit. One of them's last day is Thursday. Another one quit about 2 weeks ago, and then we lost another person. So right now I'm the only one able to process in my lab again after training everybody. So what's been causing the outbreak is something that you might have just seen in the news, actually, and I'm glad that it's finally out there, that they're talking about airborne infection, and it's not the same as droplet infection. The air droplets, the water droplets in the air they've been talking about are very heavy water droplets, like when you sneeze and most of it falls to the ground, and you could stay about 6 feet back, and those big droplets are not going to affect you, not going to get close to you. But what they have not been talking about, and has been apparent for people in science, that there's been cases like there's a Seattle choir that was back in February or March that they all distanced, they all washed their hands, and they all sang together, socially distant from one another, and 45 out of 60 people got COVID from one person there. So that was the first case of possible airborne effect, and I've been looking into it since then, and I've come up with a lot of things that I found, and pretty much I've concluded it's airborne, but the WHO is still saying droplets, and there has been recently a few hundred scientists signing on to try to change the opinion of the WHO. The difference between airborne droplets and aerosolized droplets and the bigger droplets is the fact that, and you'll see a pattern here, that you cannot go indoors with somebody else, with like a bunch of people, like into a crowded dine-in restaurant or to a bar, because at those places nobody can wear face masks when they're eating or when they're drinking, and the airborne droplets accumulate in the air, and they float in the air for hours, and they can be pushed around by air conditioning. There's actually now a famous study from South Korea office that a lady in her cubicle on the wing of her floor, she infected most of the people on her wing, even the people that were far at the end of the room. And the people across the way, there was like a walkway, and then there was another side on the other wing of the building, and only like 3 people had gotten infected on that side. So it's a very good case of airborne transmission. There's a restaurant in China as well that this happened. There's somebody at a table that was sick. It transferred to the people like downwind from them from the air conditioner, and it even went upwind. They think because as people walk by, air drafts would go against the air conditioning, and the people that were upwind from the air conditioning still got infected. So if you're going out and doing anything, it's best to stay outdoors, because I liken it to imagine a tub of water and a shot glass of water, and you have a dropper full of ink, and if you drop a drop into a bathtub, you won't see the bathtub change color. It'll be very dilute. But if you drop that same drop into the shot glass, you're going to see the shot glass change color, very concentrated, and that's the I guess the how I'm liking it to the indoors versus outdoors. So if you're in the outdoors, you're much safer. Wearing a mask, they've actually found, is very safe. The tricky thing is if somebody has aerosolized particles and they're sneezing in the room and they're not wearing their mask and you're wearing a mask, you can still become infected because the mask isn't small enough, which is true. The mask isn't small enough to stop the virus. It'll stop some of the virus, but it won't stop all of it. But the fact is,
Mark,
yes.
Can I ask you to close down? I really appreciate what you're saying.
Okay.
Please.
About another minute, probably.
Yeah.
But the aerosolized drops, it stops people from when they talk or breathe, because talking and breathing can release these airborne particles. So somebody wearing a mask saves you, and your mask saves them. If you're both wearing masks indoors, you're fairly safe. But it's a matter of exposure, and just because you breathe in 1 or 2 particles of the virus doesn't mean you're going to get sick. It's something that doesn't make a lot of sense to people that are in an infectious disease. But yeah, if you have some exposure to the virus, you need a certain level before you're going to get ill. So masks reduce that risk. Staying outdoors reduces the risk versus being indoors. Done.
Thank you very much for what you're doing, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay. Open floor. Any comments? How did the meeting go?
We can't.
I have a question.
We don't have time to ask Mark questions? No.
Jay saying no. Garrett, what do you? We're at 7:30.
Send him an email.
Yeah, send me an email, virulentproteins@gmail.com. I'll put it in chat.
Okay, Mark, I'm coming to you if I need you.
I think we're trying to keep it to 90 minutes, like as a reasonable Zoom time. Normally our meetings are 2 hours, but because we're on Zoom, we're trying to like cut a little shorter.
All right, anybody want to comment? How did the meeting go?
Fine.
All right.
It was great.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
adjourn.
David
Second.
Hughes, second.
Second.
Who's second?
I second. Jim Rasmussen.
All right, Jim, thank you. Jay, Garrett, anything else?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.